Good afternoon, everybody. How was lunch? How are we feeling? Do we have some energy? Because you're going to want to be paying attention to today's session. I have the honor of filling in for Erin Leonti, who could not be with us today at ClioCon, to introduce this amazing group of speakers. First up is Sonia Ebrin. She is the CEO of Courtroom 5. She is a PhD electrical engineer and former college professor with a background in utilities and artificial intelligence. And she's represented herself in court numerous times. As the CEO of Courtroom 5, Sonia has made it her personal mission to empower people to represent themselves effectively in court. And she serves on the board of Responsive Law, a national advocacy organization focused on the rights of legal consumers, and on the Leaders Council of the Legal Services Corporation, the nation's primary funding source for legal aid programs. She's a founding member of the Justice Technology Association and a trade organization for direct-to-consumer legal tech companies and nonprofits. Welcome, Sonia. Next up is Maya Markovich. She is the executive director of Justice Technology Association. She's got a unique background spanning VC, law, behavioral science, change design, and much more. Maya delivers technology, process, and business growth services worldwide. For nearly 6 years, she launched and scaled industry-first Nextlaw Labs, Nextlaw Ventures at Dentons, the world's largest law firm, delivering next-generation technology, process, client, and business growth services across the globe. Maya is currently Justice Tech Executive in Residence at Village Capital and Executive Director at the nonprofit's Justice Technology Association. It's a nonprofit trade association supporting startups building solutions for a fairer legal system. She advises multiple high-growth startups, investor and venture funds, and consults on legal department and law firm innovation and transformation initiatives, building future-proof methodologies and tech to advance the legal industry, its clients and consumers via achievable, sustainable, and scalable design and implementation. Maya's won multiple awards, including Influential Women in Legal Tech, Women Leading Legal Tech, and so much more. Welcome, Maya. And last but not least, Erin Levine. She is the CEO and founder of Hello Divorce. And Erin is on a mission to help divorcing spouses empower a better life. She's the CEO and founder of Hello Divorce, a venture capital-backed online platform that combines easy-to-use digital tools with integrated expert help to provide quality and affordable legal help to all. Through a framework that provides support and resources for all aspects of separation, Erin has helped thousands of people navigate their divorces with less stress, avoid missteps, and reimagine their next best chapter. Erin is a seasoned lawyer, mediator, private judge, and certified family law specialist, and her innovative approach to the delivery of legal services has been acknowledged by the legal industry and beyond, with recognitions from Forbes, Vice, Above the Law, TechCrunch, and Business Insiders. And she's also received numerous awards that include the American Bar Association's James I. Keene Memorial Award for Excellence in E-Lawyering, ABA Journal's Legal Rebel, and many more. Welcome to the stage, ladies.
Thank you.
All right, Maya, take it away.
Okay. So first of all, I just wanted to check in. Obviously, that was a very long and very complimentary set of intros, but I'm head of the JTA, Nonprofit Trade Association, and what we do is we're the first and only organization that's bringing together entrepreneurs in pursuit of equity in the justice system. So what we're doing is we're pulling this ecosystem together. We're educating people about the opportunity for impact and ROI and moving the whole thing forward. We're really about creating a better experience for everybody across the justice system. So show of hands, anybody who here knows what Justice Tech is or what it refers to? Okay. Nice, thank you. So legal tech kind of versus justice tech. Legal tech is law firm tech. That's the way we look at it. Tools to help lawyers do their jobs more efficiently. Justice tech is consumer-facing technology for tools to access justice and for them to access their rights to address the justice gap, and is designed for consumers to access directly to improve their experience, and it's placed directly into the hands of the consumers. So what JTA is also trying to do here is teach and advocate for these new methodologies and ways of delivering legal services and delivering justice. So not really lawyer-centric world anymore. What we're looking at is kind of a new, that's not working. What we really need to be doing is, the world is changing and we want to advance folks being a part of it.
And so I'm Sonia, Chief Executive at Courtroom 5. We make litigation easier for people representing themselves in court. And the reason we exist and so many other justice tech organizations exist is because the system is broken. You all know some of the numbers. 3 out of 4 people in civil court are self-represented, many because they can't afford a lawyer or maybe had some negative experiences. But 70% of people reach out to legal aid and are turned away. There are, you might make $1 more than the 120% income limit, or, your local legal aid agency may not cover the type of legal matter you have. But that's a massive number of people who aren't being served and who also just don't have access to pay for lawyers. If you go to family court, 4 out of 5 of those people on either side are going to be there without a lawyer. And as you all know, this isn't Judge Judy's court, right? This isn't, you don't have the friendly judge who's going to just listen to each side and make a good decision on the law. You've got to litigate these courses. At Courtroom 5, we help people with serious claims, some certainly high conflict divorces, but also home foreclosures. Folks are handling their own medical malpractice cases or inheritance and probate issues. It's across the board, right? And again, for folks in the middle class who can't afford a lawyer, they also don't have access to legal aid. What do? Right? And so Justice Tech exists to help that huge middle class populations. If you've seen the Justice Gap report from the Legal Services Corporation, 92% of low-income people don't get the help they need, but this is also a broad middle class issue. 2/3 of middle class people, when they run into a legal issue, don't even go looking for a lawyer, right? They don't even go looking for a lawyer because they know it's unattainable. They may not have the retainer. They certainly don't have the billable hours that are going to stack up fairly rapidly. And so Justice Tech exists to serve that broad middle class. I'll tell you just a bit about Courtroom 5 here, but we're a small drop in the bucket for the solutions that are out here. Courtroom 5, again, we don't do criminal. We wouldn't be a solution for your traffic ticket or even your small claims case. But again, home foreclosure, medical malpractice, personal injury, high conflict divorces, across the board, folks that are going to see a judge many times, and if they survive the case and file sometimes hundreds of complex legal documents, we help them do that. We've got a very low-cost membership solution that just helps them understand the flow of litigation, get some basic training on what they're involved in. And then when they decide what they want to do, we have some fairly carefully curated journeys for specific filings. If you need to answer a complaint or move to dismiss a complaint, if you're getting into discovery, if you're later in pretrial matters, we can sort of help you file effective legal documents, right? We've also got some artificial intelligence involved that helps you decide what you should be filing in any particular instance. Almost all of our customers at some point in their cases will want to talk to a lawyer or some other legal professional to get some support. And so we've also been able to facilitate some of those engagements. But again, that's Courtroom 5, but we are just across the board. We've got many other solutions in Justice Tech.
If I can just jump in here, I forgot to mention something. What is really important is I mentioned what Justice Tech is, but what it is not. It is not a cheaper alternative to a lawyer. It is a part of a spectrum of solutions, and that's kind of what we're talking about today.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really important point. The goal here is not to simply build a cheaper alternative to a lawyer. The goal is to think about how we can build a better experience, because we know that not only can the vast majority of people not afford a lawyer, but even those who can often, obviously not with the lawyers in this room, but often don't have the experience that they want to have with that lawyer. And at the risk of disrupting the flow, I just want to say how lovely it is to speak in front of those of you in this room who are nodding your heads as we are speaking, because a lot of times when we speak about access to justice or justice tech or the difference between justice tech and legal tech, there's a lot of blank stares. And I can really tell that those of you that are here really want to hear about this topic. So thank you for that. I appreciate it. So some of the examples that you are seeing on the screen, these are actually examples that we bring up because they are members of the Justice Technology Association, which Maya is the executive director of, and Sonia and I are founding board members of. And the reason why I bring them up in particular is because they have all subscribed to a code of values. And I don't know them off the top of my head, but basically, do you?
I don't know all of them off the top of my head, but it's primarily, ethical data privacy rules, things like prioritizing consumer protection, mitigating consumer harm.
Yes, exactly. But taking you back a little bit, a few years ago, and this is to show that justice tech is on the rise. A few years ago, when we thought about tech directly to consumer, what did we think? We thought about Nolo self-help, and we thought about LegalZoom, and we all have our opinions on both, right? That was basically it. Then we saw 2016, we saw Upsolve, and since then, Upsolve has done an extraordinary job processing hundreds of thousands of bankruptcy petitions. We've seen Boundless do a wonderful job processing thousands and thousands of immigration petitions. And now we are seeing these other companies emerge. In particular, we are seeing, let me mention a couple that are here so that maybe you'll get a chance to meet them. TurnSignal. So TurnSignal offers targeted support in real time for drivers that are pulled over, to have an attorney who is on video listen and interact while they're being spoken to a police officer. There is also People Clerk. People Clerk is founded by Camille Lopez, who's another founding member of the Justice Technology Association. Her focus, her app, is to help people prepare and manage their small claims action. So everything from how to negotiate a resolution before you even get to court, to preparing your forms, navigating the court process, filing the forms, and showing up in court, and even after. Another founding member, and I promise this is the last one, there's one more founding member, Yusuf. He has an app called Easy Expunctions, and that is targeted at people in, I think, Texas and Florida now, who can use his app to help expunge their criminal record. And some of you might know my company, Hello Divorce, and we have a platform that allows people to complete their entire divorce using our tech alone, or they can add on legal, wellness, or financial help to the extent that they need it. So lawyers partner with Hello Divorce consumers, and Hello Divorce for that matter, in a couple different ways. So number one is that about 6 to 10% of our customers end up wanting to work with a lawyer. And in that case, we partner with lawyers to provide limited scope services such as reviewing documents, providing advice for negotiation or mediation. And then the second way is to become a trusted partner so that you can access customers that ultimately do need full representation. Trusted partners generally have access to customers who've now been well educated, who've used tech to do the first draft of their forms, who've been able to use our app to understand their finances, to get that all in one place. And then we seamlessly hand off the case to a lawyer to step in and move forward. So there are lots of other ways that lawyers can collaborate with justice tech companies for mutual benefit. And we will continue to talk you through a bunch of those different ways. But in general, the way we look at it is to boost revenue, to increase your margin, to future-proof your practice, delight clients, expand your market, just what Jack was talking about earlier, and help shape the future, and of course, bridge that access to justice gap.
You've all heard the myth that companies that provide solutions for pro se litigants, self-represented litigants, hate lawyers. And nothing could be further from the truth, right? We're not here to replace lawyers. That's not even on, in the roadmap, in the ballpark. Our customers, and I can tell you directly for Courtroom 5, almost all of our customers really need a lawyer. Nobody wants to do this kind of work on their own. If they could afford it, a vast majority, I think, would certainly hire a lawyer. We exist, Justice Tech exists for those who can't afford lawyers in the traditional way. But the lawyers that our customers, I'll speak for Courtroom 5 customers, hate are opposing counsel, all right, who are, most often abusing them, using procedural traps, and effectively denying them a chance to be heard, right? And so our goal really is to help them engage lawyers on terms that are, profitable for lawyers and affordable for our customers. But we're certainly not about sidelining lawyers. We're looking for all of us, I think, different ways to serve the huge latent demand for legal services that, the billable hour just doesn't work for them. So one of the most important ways I think that we look to engage lawyers and to work with lawyers as the Justice Tech company is to help our customers purchase limited scope services. Now, there are different models across the board. At Courtroom 5, we primarily facilitate consultations, 30-minute phone consultations with a lawyer. When we have a customer who just needs to talk about some strategy or a better understanding of the law, we give them as much legal information as we can at Courtroom 5 without crossing the line into legal advice, right? But certainly, you got customers at every stage of real litigation are going to need some legal advice. Hey, I understand the legal elements of my claim. I put together the facts that I want to plead for my complaint, but love to have a lawyer just walk me through, is this going to work? Maybe review my document before I file it, right? We see those sorts of requests for services all throughout. There's the pleading stage, and certainly when you get to discovery, how do I not answer that discovery request? Or what should I be asking, right, of the other side? Even though, again, we give folks all the information we can, we don't provide legal advice, and so customers are going to want to engage a lawyer at various states of the case. Now, the lawyers that we work with don't they don't enter appearances. They don't handle an oral argument or anything like that, but there are numerous ways that they can address a consumer's legal issues on a phone call or by providing some, hints or suggestions on a document review. So those sorts of limited scope services we find it's fairly easy to facilitate for our customers. But there are lots of other ways that lawyers can work with Justice Tech companies. So we all have, and I can say this particularly as a non-lawyer here, we all have, product development issues where we need real, legal input on some of those issues. And so we've certainly had an opportunity to work as, have lawyers work with us in consulting. Many other opportunities to work with lawyers. Erin, if you want to share some other ways.
If this is interesting to you at all, if Justice Tech is interesting, if you're thinking about innovating in your own practice, if you're thinking about expanding your market, if you're thinking about supplementing your income during periods of time or parts of the year that maybe, the ebb and flow, there's less clients coming in the door, then there are a couple distinct ways that I think it would be a great way to partner with Justice Tech. To expand a little bit on the product development side, being in Justice Tech, as you know, law is in most areas of law, it is hyper local. So when a justice company expands into a new state, we're not just learning a new state law, we're learning what it looks like from county to county. Certainly there are companies out there that just say, okay, we've automated your forms, good luck, have a nice day. But a true Justice Tech company knows whether or not, Judge Smith wants the forms hole punched or stapled when they get submitted to the court. So we love to consult with lawyers to help us build out products that, keep in mind, these are not direct competitors to you. These are our customers, for the most part, are people that never would have hired a lawyer to begin with. However, if they need one, they're going to go to you, either through us for limited scope services, like Sonia mentioned, or if it's full representation, then it opts out of our ecosystem and fully into yours. A lot of our lawyer partners like to give their newer or younger lawyers, have them work with us or other Justice Tech companies to give them some hands-on experience with clients. Because remember, we're not handling full representation cases. So these are cases where we've helped the customer with their fear, with their overwhelm. The case is moving at a slower pace. There's a lot less stress or panic, no big crisis. And the lawyer's job is simply to review the paperwork before it's filed with the court and to give somebody a sanity check, or to provide a little extra help in negotiation. So it's a great way for them to get some real, good hands-on experience. And then that is all I can think of in the moment.
Well, I think also, in a couple of states, in Arizona and in Utah, Justice Tech companies can directly employ lawyers to work with them. So there are actual career opportunities available. And as the regulatory reform takes hold, we hope to see a good bit more of that as well.
Yes. Oh, definitely. It's a little bit tricky, and I'm sure there'll be questions about this, and we will open up to questions at the end in terms of how we can, as you can imagine, work with lawyers. So for example, we're part of the Hello Divorce is part of the Utah Sandbox. If you're working with us in Utah, we can employ you directly. If we're working with you in another state, you would be partnering with our law firm. We have a 2-entity model. So, sometimes we have to be creative, but do so in a way that is regulatory compliant.
I'd add one more thing on that. We've had, through facilitating limited scope engagements for some of our customers, we've seen them take the leap and hire those lawyers directly, right? And the nice thing is that they don't generally end their Courtroom 5 memberships. They want to participate very actively with the lawyer who is now representing them. And so it's not certainly, opening the door to legal services isn't a threat to us. We're all looking for better outcomes for these customers. So the short story here is that we provide opportunities for lawyers to directly, acquire clients that they wouldn't have access to in other ways.
That's a perfect segue, actually. The competitive advantage, right? So, we need to embrace technology to stay ahead, obviously, in this industry. How many of you feel that you're using Clio, for example, to your full potential, or to its full capability? I can't imagine anyone is. It's just so massive. But so the first thing you can do is obviously look at your existing technology. If it's working for you, then no need to find the next shiny new object. But even before automating anything yourself, is there something you can eliminate altogether in terms of your workflows? Partnerships with Justice Tech companies can elevate a lawyer's practice and expand their reach, as we've been describing here. But there's also a lot more to it. There's things like brand amplification, partnering with growing justice tech companies for co-marketing opportunities, tapping into their increasing brand recognition and their reach, boosting marketing efforts, building brand and digital presence. Justice tech needs volume, and they are focused on marketing and SEO and educating clients long before they're ready to hire a lawyer. So, asking these companies, do they have opportunities for you to do a webinar or a reel, and do co-marketing efforts? I can tell you from experience, they are very receptive to those kinds of things. It's mutually beneficial. Consider setting yourself apart by looking to Justice Tech as an example to diversify and expand your offerings. You don't need to build a startup. We're doing that. These ladies are doing that. You can use tools that exist already, like Gavel, to make law more accessible. And Hella Divorce started as an extension of Aaron's law firm. So to offer value to consumers and build these new revenue streams, like premium content, advice, sessions, and the legal templates. So obviously, right, we're all here. ClioCon is a perfect example of the digital transformation in legal tech, and in the legal industry. Our lives are increasingly digital. Consumers are relying on this and expecting it, right? Anything from like telehealth to online shopping, that's like the first thing that consumers really think of. The legal profession is not exempt from that. If lawyers stay out of the justice tech conversation, they're not only risking kind of becoming irrelevant, but also risk us going backwards in our efforts to expand access. There will never be enough without kind of this partnership. Tech solutions may lack depth without these legal insights. And so it's the win-win-win, actually, the triple impact. We've all seen, what happens with self-help options. So there's this risk of marginalization in tech-driven legal landscapes. And how lawyers can contribute, things like providing this crucial legal advice and expertise to technology development. There's so many overlays to these things. So engaging in discussions to ensure that that the tech is progressing ethically, or at a minimum, don't let the consumer protection attorney majority kind of scare you into believing that justice tech will take your jobs or is harming society. We have thousands and thousands of reviews and testimonials that say otherwise. Do you want to jump in on the regulatory stuff at all, or?
I always like the Netflix example, the analogy. When you think about being sidelined, who is it? They're no longer around. The Blockbuster, yeah. Netflix actually tried to sell themselves to Blockbuster early on. We all want to be acquired maybe one of these days, and so we wouldn't reach out to a potential acquirer and say, "Hey, buy me now." But Netflix actually did that with Blockbuster. There's this streaming concept coming in, and we want to do some of that. And Blockbuster essentially chased them out the door. That's never going to happen. Get out of here. And Blockbuster's no longer around. And of course, most of us have Netflix subscriptions. And so you see those sorts of technological changes really make significant changes in an industry that you wouldn't anticipate. And I would just, when you're thinking about being sidelined, there's so many threats, right? Many of your colleagues are listening to a presentation on ChatGPT and AI and the way it might threaten the profession. But really, it's going to be folks like us if we don't get more of you involved, right? We want to engage the legal profession because the people we serve need you, right? But we're going to provide services to them regardless. And so you want to get on board and not let the tech that we're building just sideline you. Just wanted to issue a subtle threat there.
That's a great way to wrap it up. Is there any last comments that any of you want to make before we open it up to a Q&A?
No. Yeah.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions? Yes?
Do you know if there's any similar organizations in Canada?
Any similar organizations in Canada? Well, we do have a couple members that are in Canada, specifically in the family law space. I don't know about any other areas.
Happy to connect with you afterwards. Yeah, we can. It's our.
Yeah, great.
You're welcome.
Yeah, if you want to connect afterwards, I can't remember either name offhand, but I do know one is a member of here. Another, he's not a member yet, but he's at CleoCon, so I can introduce you or tell you his, get you connected there.
Well, yeah, and actually at a high. So first of all, yes, indeed, we're a global organization. Most of our members are currently in the U.S., but we have members in Europe and North and South America as well. So I would also say, with respect to JTA, one of the things that we've discovered is really incredibly valuable, right, is this code of ethics. It really lays a baseline for how you can communicate and collaborate with folks. And we do have ways for law firms to get involved officially. So please, happy to talk more about that too with you afterwards.
Justice Tech is at justicetechassociation.org. And so we're, invite anyone who's interested to please join us. That there are, we have memberships for law firms who want to get involved as well. So I'd invite you all to take a look at the website there.
Yeah.
Okay, so my question is about adoption. So you mentioned that Justice Tech takes volume, and I think it's harder than we think to get people to buy these things. So would you mind discussing that honestly, what you found with adoption and how to get adoption from those people who cannot afford lawyers?
I'll share. We acquire customers primarily through SEO. We started early on just talking about being self-represented litigants and just the experiences that we had in court, sharing our experience and providing information and tips with folks. And so that, has never left us. We're still blogging, and we reach most of our folks through search engines. That way we've done some work in social as well. We've actually had a few lawyers refer clients they couldn't serve to Courtroom 5.2. So we've built out a small referral network as well. But adoption is, for any company, particularly startups, very, very difficult. It's something that you have to crack individually for the specific organization.
Yeah, it's definitely a big pain point. Once we have people within our network, we have an 89.6, which I'm very proud of, retaining percentage in terms of people who stay with us and are successful. So they start and finish their divorce with us. If you, in the same way that we're looking to lawyers to help build our authority and help provide limited scope services to our customers, you can look to us to see how we market to consumers, because instead of the 10 or 20 or 100 customers that I needed a quarter at my law firm, even when I had 10, 12 lawyers, I need thousands now. And so so I have to really do lots of different things. And one thing that I can share with you that's been really helpful is that when I was a lawyer, I'm still a lawyer, but when I was in my law firm, I spent all of my time focused on content, because we know content is king, on content that was focused on people in the crisis, in that legal issue. But we know that when somebody has a landlord-tenant issue, when someone is going bankrupt, when someone's getting a divorce, 9 times out of 10, that didn't happen overnight. Something was going on in their lives months or years before. And speaking to them then not only builds a relationship with them on Instagram, through organic traffic, through an online support group, which is, yes, what we are doing now, that builds the relationship so that when they do need that legal help, they say, okay, let's see first if hello divorce. Let's see first if trust and will. Let's see first if courtroom 5 can be a good solution for us. So, yeah, I mean, it is challenging. I encourage lawyers to be less afraid to send clients to us for the downloads, for the divorce prep downloads, for the checklist. You won't lose a client. If they come to you to hire a lawyer, they want a lawyer. And anything that you can do to build trust in a profession where people really struggle with trusting lawyers is going to really be meaningful for your client. So I didn't answer it directly, but yes, it's a pain point that we work really hard to do, but we're still here, so and we're still growing, so it's a good sign.
Hi. I guess this is a point of clarification about earlier you had said something about consumer protection attorneys trying to scare off people from using justice tech services. And I'm curious because I'm a consumer rights attorney.
Yeah.
And I got more work than I can handle. Mm-hmm. I'm in an area where there's almost nobody who's focusing their practice on this area. And I have a certain luxury of being able to send people to certain legal aid organizations because I started my career at one, and also I built up relationships with others where if I say, Russell said, call, if Aaron's at, Bay Area Legal Aid out in San Francisco, for example, and they say, well, Russell Dombrow said to call you, they'll move you up to the front of the line. But that doesn't solve the problem of people who are over income, or the people who, no matter what you tell them, don't want to use legal aid because they think they've got that mythical stigma that, the legal aid attorneys are there because they couldn't get a job anywhere else, and therefore they're no good. And I'm just saying, I'm here not only because I promised Aaron a couple hours ago that I would be here and also said something on LinkedIn a couple of weeks ago, but also because I want to create something like this in my sphere for things like lemon law, for things like debt collection defense, which I know Courtroom 5 is already doing to a degree. And I know, okay, wait a minute, now I know I can refer people, because I get people who come to me looking for wage garnishment help.
Right.
And
probably not something that
I can do it. I can do it, but the problem is economically bad. Whereas if I could say, go to Courtroom 5, they'll charge you, but it'll be affordable. Yeah. And you can probably stop the garnishment and maybe even get the judgment vacated so that it's not even a thing.
Right.
So, I mean, I guess my point here is I'm just hoping that by consumer protection attorneys, you don't mean...
We don't mean you. Definitely not.
I mean, and
historically, lawyers that identify as consumer protection or PI have taken a very aggressive stance against companies like ours.
Right.
Now, that certainly is not you, and certainly is not the majority, but that is how they identify. So I think that's where that came from.
I mean, so I mean, and ask any one of us in NACA, and we'll all tell you that, we need to clone ourselves 5 times over.
That's interesting.
And that probably won't even make a dent. Yeah.
Well, no good decision was ever made from somebody making it from a place of fear. So it's really interesting for me to see that, like, when people do that, especially attorneys that are doing that, I can't take you seriously until you can tell me that it's not coming from a place of panic.
We, absolutely refer them to Courtroom 5. Better yet, though, join our, limited scope network. I mean, we need all of the folks that we're serving, almost all the folks that we're serving, would love at some point to get limited scope services too. And we have a hard time because we only want them to talk with a lawyer in their jurisdiction. If you're in Massachusetts, you're not going to really benefit somebody in New Jersey or California. And so, we invite you, if you want to refer them, would you also be willing to talk to them occasionally, right? For pay, right? You get paid up front, right? It's additional revenue. Folks make money.
It's about volume. It's about volume. I mean, it's a switch, right? Like you can make a good. There are plenty of people that work for me that make a very good living, but instead of 10 or 15 cases at a time, they might have 100.
Right.
But what I will tell you is they don't have to schedule. They don't have to manage a case file. They don't have to go to court. They don't have to talk to an opposing counsel. All they have to do is show up at the hours that they've decided they want to work and make somebody feel better by talking them through whatever legal issue is on their mind in the moment. Like, that's not terrible for some of us. It's not what everybody wants, but for some of us, that's not such a bad thing.
It's not at all. And it's actually perfect for, younger attorneys, folks that are just learning their practice. These aren't terribly complicated issues that our customers have, right? But these are things that we can't tell them for regulatory reasons, and that a lawyer could easily just walk them through, as Aaron said, walk them through the basic legal issues in their jurisdiction. So it's great. It is a question of volume and the type of legal work you want to do.
Well, that sort of goes to my point. Hi, another consumer protection attorney and National Association of Consumer Advocates member logging onto the chat to say that we all have more work than we could know what to do with in the private practice of debt collection defense, auto fraud, all of those things. I think when we're hearing consumer protection, what I hear in response to justice tech and things like this is change-resistant institutions like bar associations and things like that, claiming that they are trying to protect consumers by resisting these changes, right? And you got two consumer protection attorneys here saying, but not a problem for us. I mean, that's our job. In the reason why is because some help is better than no help. And we've seen all too often people getting ground up and ground down by systems without any help.
So, I agree, but unfortunately, that's actually not what's happening in a lot of states. In a lot of states, bar associations are actually working very hard to build commissions to study the access to justice issue, to figure out alternative ways to re-regulate and to allow companies like ours to hire lawyers directly. And yet there's other lawyers, not you, but other lawyers that are coming forward that are saying, no, you need to focus on those 3 bad lawyers that, weren't prosecuted instead of thinking about this. So it's quite frustrating because for the first time, we're seeing a lot of bar associations and a lot of state bars, start to actually look beyond existing regulations, and it's lawyers that are pushing back.
Aaron, when I saw your slide, maybe it was before this one, but the one called Shaping the Future, it said when lawyers sit out justice tech conversation.
Yeah.
What came to my mind was changing the word lawyers to judges or the court. Mm-hmm. Have you had experience, or if you haven't, do you have recommendations for how do you get the dog wagging instead of the tail wagging the dog? A lot of these solutions I see are forced into a situation to respond to what rules and courts have established. Obviously, we have to go that direction upstream. How do you go downstream by getting the court to make it better to begin with? In other words, having online dispute resolution, so I don't even get the defendant taking a day off of work to come into courtroom to say, I admit to the debt, now let's do a collection process on it. I didn't have to come to court because the court established a system to make it more efficient. How do you start there?
a wildly important point. So the National Center for State Courts have been an incredible ally, whether they mean to or not, have really done a tremendous job at connecting a lot of us Justice Tech founders to the people in the court systems that are doing good work. So for example, we might develop a tool, hypothetically, that needs to be certified in order for the courts to use it. But for whatever reason, we can't seem to navigate it. We oftentimes get help from them to introduce us to the right person. But really, I can't speak for the whole team. I will say for me, I've taken the approach of let me get a certain amount of volume. I'm focusing on 3 counties, and I waited until we hit 5,000 cases in each, because I wanted to then go to the presiding judge in each and say, look at the amount of weight we took off of your plate. Look at what we were able to accomplish. And in one, I got, do you know how much you just took off of my budget? That was problematic. But the other 2 we're starting to have a dialogue, so that will be really interesting. But I have to say that we're still being met with a ton of resistance. We have a couple of founders in the Justice Technology Association that in another state, these 2 litigants took the forms that they created through the app and went to court, and the judges straight up denied the petitions because they had been created by an app, which the judges straight up said was unauthorized practice of law. Then the founders of those Justice Tech companies took the same forms and came in with their lawyer hats on, because they're both lawyers, the next hearing, and they were immediately granted by the judge. So there's so much bias as well. So it's something that keeps me up at night, that I'm thinking about all the time, but we have a long way to go.
All of us up at night, I think. And actually, one thing that I also wanted to go back to and address is that one thing you said is really stuck out, and it's something I hear a lot, and that is that, it's the work that doesn't make economic sense for attorneys to do, right? So that's the economic opportunity right there of this kind of partnership, because what does that do? That enables more people to go through the process with ethical companies, ethical tech companies who are working with attorneys to make that gap narrower. And I would sleep like a baby speaking of sleeping if we could really operationalize that, because lawyers, there are some very recalcitrant lawyers and quite vocal that are really trying to maintain a monopoly on work that they're not willing to do. So we're trying to slot in kind of and make it like this kind of partnership that reaches this vast group of people and benefits all sides. Somebody.
Just the one thing I did want to follow up on, because when you followed up on what I said, here's the other thing is, and I think anybody here who litigates will sit there and can talk about an experience where they've been in a courtroom and there's a pro se litigant trying to represent themselves, and they basically grind what is otherwise a smooth running court calendar to a halt.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's the other thing where I think Justice Tech can play a role, because then the person understands that they can't bring certain claims. There are certain times to raise certain issues that an attorney's going to know that a pro se litigant's not going to know.
Totally. Yeah.
I'd love to get our solutions directly into the courtroom, to the self-help centers. I don't at this point, I wouldn't even know where to start. Not that we can't do it, but we're so overwhelmed with just running our own companies and building our brands.
It's everywhere.
If you have any other thoughts around this, anyone in the room, I think we would love to talk about it offline for sure.
I would just add to that. We have heard from a couple of clerks. Haven't worked directly with judges, but we have heard from a couple of clerks about the reduction in the burden, right, of justice tech. When they're dealing with a pro se litigant who understands what the procedure is about, the judge doesn't have to bend over quite so much to just explain what's happening. That it does tend to lower the amount of time. So that docket gets a little easier those days, but the clerks have, and presumably the courts as a whole have just a huge burden, whether it's political or just policy or whatever it is, in working directly with for-profit justice tech organizations. And so that's one of the things we sort of have to have a larger conversation about.
Hi, I'm in North Carolina, and I'm working with a couple of you guys on the Innovation Board in North Carolina. Yay! So we're making great strides, hopefully, in North Carolina. What lessons can we learn from you guys on how California had trouble with the plaintiffs' bar, and how we can maybe circumvent that in North Carolina?
Just the short answer of that is that there is an excellent panel tomorrow with one of the foremost experts on that, Natalie Knowlton, who's also on our on the board. I wouldn't even dream of trying to explain it in the way she can. But IELTS also has obviously a very deep bench of a website on what's going on in each state. Does anyone else have any? I'm
a relentless optimist. And
yeah.
I cried for 2 days like that. I think, we never let your guard down, right? I think everyone thought we had it in the bag. And by having it in the bag, I don't mean that the regs were going to change. The only thing we were asking for is for the court or the bar to have the ability to consider
to convene a committee to think about it.
That's it. And they stopped it. They literally, I was literally by phone, but in front of the legislators, California state legislators. These senators, they had the plaintiffs, lobby with, and this is why we want to have the ability to be able to lobby on our own and have money. They came in their fancy suits and with lots and lots of money and said, "This is bad. This is bad. You're focused." So, anyways,
yeah.
There's another about it.
That is such a good conversation.
We were overconfident.
But I will say the other thing that I've noticed is more of kind of an outside observer of all of these things is that the states where the bar associations are more fully run by the judiciary seem to be much more open to these kinds of conversations than those that are run and dominated by plaintiffs' bars, for instance.
So we should all move up.
So, yeah.
And I would just, Megan, thanks for the question. In North Carolina, we have folks that are very progressive on these issues and a lot of members of the bar who would like things to sort of move backwards even. And I think it's really important that we take lessons from what happened in California. To your question, though, I think with the Innovation Lab and the folks that are that the lab has surrounded itself with, I think we've got the folks in North Carolina who are going to move this thing forward. And we also have a recognition, I think, in North Carolina that it's not a liberal versus conservative position, right? That you can't look at who somebody votes for and tell what their position is on regulatory reform. And I think that's something we need to double down on, particularly with the way the Supreme Court in North Carolina has gone, and just help them understand the wisdom, even from a libertarian perspective, of regulatory reform and just moving forward on some of these issues.
Well, because the bottom line is not only serving folks, but the economic opportunity for the bar and the attorneys in those states.
Yes. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Yeah. Thank you.